Me when?
We're recording now.
Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to the next in our series of online classes. This one being just one of the most kind of fun and frivolous topics, I think, which is petite cheeses. Petite, of course, being the word for small, diminutive, which is not an easy word to say, clearly.
Say it again.
I actually screwed it up again.
Don't say it again.
Diminutive. How's that? Small, teeny tiny, itty bitty cheeses. We're going to learn what makes an itty bitty cheese. Why are they so hard to make? Why are they so hard to transport? What makes them so cool other than the fact that, OMG, so precious, right? So we're going to learn a little bit about that. We're going to taste 4 splendid examples, 3 from the United States, 1 from the great cheese-making nation of France. And I'm going to have some mini toasts and some mini honey and a beautiful Petit Chablis. So we will learn about the Chablis region of France, what makes it so sought after, so uber expensive and crazy, and what the different sort of grades of Chablis are, and what does it mean to be a Petit Chablis.
But it's still 750 full milliliters, right?
Yes, it is not in fact petite in and of itself. The region is Petit Chablis. Good. Correct. The bottle is not tiny, as you all probably know, because lots of you have at least 1 or 2 of these sitting beside you right now. All right. Are we ready to get started?
Yes.
Here. Wonderful. I'm so happy to have you all here tonight. Very excited. My name is Jill. I'm the owner of Petite, and I'm going to be your not so dainty guide through all that is petite cheeses tonight. As always, I have my wonderful husband, Jeff, with me here tonight, who you all can see bright and clear on your screen. You can see Jeff and you can see me. Jeff can see you, but I cannot. So the way that we are going to chat with one another, the way that you're going to ask questions is to type them into your chat window. And Jeff is like my eyes on the dashboard, and he will be relaying to me your questions, your comments, anything that you need me to clarify throughout the class. And as a lot of you know who have done these classes before, the chat becomes this fun little community in itself. So feel free to answer one another's questions if we don't get to them right away. Some of you are darn near cheese experts. You've been doing all of our classes for so many years now. So chime in if anyone has questions or we don't get to them quickly enough. We love to see that.
Wonderful.
Any questions before we begin?
Thomas Colleen's question is, what should the drinking game be tonight?
Oh boy, that's right. We'll have to see what.
Every time Jill says petite, or what was the word you couldn't say?
Diminutive.
Every time Jill says diminutive incorrectly or correctly.
Right, which would be 95% of the time, yes. I think once it was how to, last time, I don't remember what it was. It was something funny. Anyway, so speaking of drinking, why don't we go ahead and get started with our beautiful Petit Chablis wine. So how many of you out there, you can just do kind of a show of hands, and Jeff can relay this to me, would describe yourselves as not a Chardonnay lover? Historically, right? If you would have said to me, oh, Jill, you want a Chardonnay? I'd be like, no Chardonnay for me. Don't like Chardonnay. Why? Why would that be? Because I think my very first exposure to the Chardonnay grape and the wine made thereof was sort of New World style, oaky, buttery popcorny, toasty Chardonnay. So New World style. And I always thought that's what Chardonnay was, that it had this odd feeling of like almost like a viscosity to it, a richness, almost an oiliness that I didn't like. And of course, it had this like overt kind of oakiness and sometimes a smokiness and a butteriness that I thought clashed with food. I didn't think it worked well with food, and I just didn't like the flavors. It tasted like something that shouldn't be in my wine, frankly. It turns out I was needing a big lesson in what the beauty of Chardonnay is. So the Chardonnay grape is a white grape, obviously, and is grown all over the world. It is very much a cool climate lover. So Chardonnay can be grown in lots and lots of different regions. Depending on how warm the climate is, you're going to get different kind of embodiments of the grape. The juice is going to taste different. How quickly is the grape ripening? How much sun is it being exposed to? How early is it picked? How late is it picked? And then, of course, what is done to it in the winery itself as you're preparing it? So is it aged on the lees, or also known as the yeast cells I should say, sounds gross, but the dead yeast cells, they call it lees, which sounds much nicer than dead yeast cells. So if a wine ages on its lees for a long time, what kind of fermentation is taking place, all of these things will have a really big effect on your end product. When I discovered this concept of old world Chardonnay, and very specifically French Chardonnay, it was like my eyes were opened to this amazing, amazing grape. What I discovered about Chardonnay, in fact, was it is a bold, sort of robust, round, beautiful, very personality driven grape. It brings a lot to the table. It can stand up against a whole spectrum of different foods. And when grown and prepared in certain ways, it can be minimal to absolutely no oak. And can just scream minerality and flintiness and almost has a tropical component to it, which I think is really, really wonderful and delicious. So when I discovered French Chardonnay, I just fell in love. So when we refer to French Chardonnay, the most popular region, or I guess the biggest region for the Chardonnay grape and also the Pinot Noir grape, is Burgundy in France. So Burgundy, red Burgundy is Pinot Noir, white Burgundy is Chardonnay. Two of the most, I don't know, popular, I suppose, grapes grown there. And it is just this beautiful, beautiful, ideal climate for growing these cooler weather grapes. Then part of the Burgundy appellation is a sub-appellation called Chablis. Now, Chablis is actually to the north and west of what you would typically think of the Burgundy region. So it's actually even a cooler climate than typical Burgundy. So when we move up to Chablis, we are amping up all of those wonderful characteristics that an even cooler climate can give to Chardonnay. Again, the minerality, the acidity, the brightness, all of that is going to be sort of amplified in a Chablis. The soil in Chablis is also very, very special. So it was a prehistoric ocean, which means that the soil there is very limestone rich, and specifically fossilized oyster shells, which is really, really fascinating and gives Chablis a very, very specific note and flavor. Now, Chablis is broken up into various sort of sub-regions, and depending on the number of acres that are allocated, it can get to be some of the most expensive land and some of the most expensive wines in the world. So like the Grand Cru Chablis is a teeny tiny portion of the Chablis that is produced in Chablis, and extraordinarily expensive. There are other regions. Jeff, if you want to actually put up the map.
I did. I put it up already.
Chablis, wonderful. And what I indicated there, y'all should see a blue dot right by the city of Bain. And that is where this wine is produced. Okay, so you will see that it is in the heart of the Petite Chablis region. And it's called Petite Chablis because not in the sense that it's small in size, because clearly there's a decent amount of Petite Chablis. It is more that it is lesser, so to speak. So it's considered the lesser Chablis. It's not quite the prime swaths of land, but it's right there. It's right there. So what this should tell you is that this producer makes some of the most esteemed and very, very expensive Grand Cru Chablis and Premier Chablis, regular Chablis, it's all of the tier system. But the Petit Chablis they make, they're using the same technology, the same expertise, a lot of the same fruit, and it comes from all right there in the same region. So this is a really cool opportunity to enjoy a really exceptional wine at a price point that's pretty approachable, especially for this region. So this.
All right, Jill, I want to interrupt you for a
please,
second because I've got the map still up and I want to take
Sure.
it down in a second. But I can't quite tell from this map how much land are we looking at here. There's
right.
no
So all of
key.
Chablis, right? All of Chablis is about, let me see here, about 5,500 hectares. So it's not a big piece of land at all. And to give you a concept of how much of that is the Grand Cru, only 100 hectares are considered Grand Cru. So it's like a teeny tiny portion of even that very small region is considered the Grand Cru of Chablis.
All right,
so,
and last question before I take the map down.
Sure.
There's a river running through there. What river is that? La Sarine. Do we know anything about that?
Yes, but it's Sarenne, I believe.
Serein.
Yes, I don't know much about that, but it makes a valley. So the most premier, you can see the red, the Chablis Grand Cru is at the bottom of that valley. So Chablis is a valley and the river runs through the valley. And the parcels that are up a little bit higher are, as you get higher away from the valley, you get the regular Chablis and the Petite Chablis. So it's really this tiny, tiny parcel of land there that would be considered the Grand Cru, and it's right at the bottom of the valley, which is the most premier, gets the most sun exposure, all of the things that would make the wine just sing. And France, may not surprise a lot of you, is super, super terroir driven. And so this is why it's almost funny to those of us who don't really understand the wine business or how it all works. But even the tiniest parcel of land can be deemed, because the land there is so ancient, the soil is so ancient, even a tiny, tiny parcel of land can be considered very different than even a neighboring parcel. So terroir is critical to the French when it comes to winemaking. And so you may look at this and say, oh, really? It's like right there. What is the big difference? They would claim that the slight difference of degree exposure to the sun, the slightly different soil composition of that side of the riverbank makes all the difference in the world. And so it's taken very, very seriously in France. Any other questions from anyone before we proceed with our specific wine? Okay, so
everybody ask your wine questions now, so that when Jill's done with the wine, we can move on.
We'll move on to our cheeses. So this is the Domaine Louis Moreau Petit Chablis 2020. And Louis Moreau is a sixth generation winemaker in Chablis. His family has resided in Chablis since the early 1800s. So it's a pretty remarkable family story as well. He started making his own wines on his own land in Chablis with his wife back in the 90s. So it's pretty neat family story there. So another thing that I love about this wine is the screw top. Super, super duper fan of the screw top wines. To open your screw top, unless you've already probably opened it and you're halfway through your bottle already, you're going to hold from the bottom and then hold from the top, and you're actually going to twist from the bottom because it will give you a little bit more torque and enable you to open that bottle that much easier. So we're going to go ahead and pour a little bit in here. The Chardonnay grape is known for its beautiful golden hue. So as you can see, it's fairly light and yet has this gorgeous, gorgeous hint of color to it. A lot of people will call it almost like a fresh straw, fresh, clean straw color, which is kind of cool. So we're going to take a sniff of this, and right away I am hit with tropical notes, right? And we're not talking like Sauvignon Blanc tropical, but we're talking beautiful apple, citrus, get a little bit of like a honeysuckle going on, which is just beautiful. What you do not smell at all, because this is never even sees an oak barrel, is wood. You get no wood presence at all. This is aged only in the stainless steel. It's fermented in stainless steel. So there's absolutely no oak present here at all. Clean, very, very pure expression of the grape. So good. So it makes my mouth water like crazy, right? So the acidity is what is causing your mouth to water. So if you just took a sip of this and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm like drooling, that's exactly what's going on. The acidity in this wine communicates to your palate, food is coming, let's get ready. So you begin to salivate, because salivation is actually the first step to digesting, along with chewing, of course. So it's getting your mouth all ready for the deliciousness that is to come. Very, very clean, wonderful finish. I can still taste this wine. It has a beautiful structure, beautiful depth and complexity, all with no oak. Go figure.
So tell us about the oak. Why did, when California started making wines?
It's not just California.
Oh, it seemed like, no?
No, I said New World. Because I didn't want to pigeonhole California, because a lot of people give California a hard time. They give California a hard time, like, oh, they make these big, like jammy, fruit-forward wines. They make lots of oaky wines. It's not just California. It really is more of a New World style, to have more of a fruit presence, to have the fruit be more forward, to introduce those alternative textures and flavors through the addition of oak, a little bit more of a velvety experience on the palate. All of those things would be considered a little bit more New World.
Was that an attempt at being creative? Was it an attempt to cover bad grapes? Was it an attempt?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And yes. So originally, and to this day, oak barrels are used to age wine because they're a beautiful medium in which to do that. They are semi-porous, semi-permeable, so they actually will allow some air to filter into the wine that helps it age in a very, very gradual way. Depending on the size of the barrel, you will get different sort of presence of oak, actual wood flavor. If you're using new barrels, the oak will be much more prominent in the flavor and also in its sort of textural and structural effects. If you're using used oak barrels, you will just be getting kind of the structure and the complexity and the aeration, and you won't really be getting an oaky experience from those barrels. So lots can be done with the barrels, and they have been used for thousands of years in winemaking. I think what started to happen is as wine started to be more mass produced and more produced for larger audiences who wanted uniformity and consistency, habits in winemaking began to change. So originally, people adored the fact that each vintage tasted different, much like cheeses. Artisan cheeses, they're never going to taste the same way twice, depending on what the animal is eating, what the environment is like. All of these things will affect each batch of cheese, unless you pasteurize the heck out of it, you homogenize the heck out of it, you make it exactly the same so that but it's not very interesting, right? It'll always be consistent, but it's not very interesting. Wine was the same way. Historically, people loved that it tasted so different. If you had a dry summer, it was different than if you had a wet summer, all of these things. But as the audience for wine grew around the world, consistency became the ruler of the day. One way to give a wine consistency is to mask any sort of fluctuations in the wine. And you can mask that with lots of different things. You can add additional bacteria, you can add certain kinds of yeasts, or you can add lots of complementary flavors like oak, which will mask not only good inconsistencies, but will also mask poorer quality grapes. So as volume went up, production went up, your yield would go up, sure, your quality of wine would not necessarily. And so the oak could be in there, to answer your second question or to address that, to kind of mask an inferior juice.
Okay, so is it fair to say that it's technically more challenging to make the wine in the way that Louis here is making it versus, okay.
Yes, the purer the fruit and the less interaction the winemaker has with the grape and the less he or she tampers with the natural fruit, the better, the more reflective of the terroir, the more reflective of the fruit and the season. And it's harder to do. You can't cheat. So yes, so that is why I think Chardonnay became sort of because it became so popular, and there was a lot of not great Chardonnay, and so it was like, let's kind of mask that a little bit with this oakiness, to the point where some wines, not just Chardonnay, are actually made with wood chips put in. So they're not even getting their oakiness from a natural barrel aging. They literally will put a net bag with wood chips and soak it in the vat of wine as it's aging to give it that oakiness. That's how far some winemakers will go with that process.
All right. Do we have any wine questions before we talk
wine questions?
Cannonballs?
Okay. One of the great things about this wine, it tastes wonderful all by itself. It is going to be an absolutely beautiful pair to these cheeses. These are rich. They are creamy. They have a lot of really pronounced flavors, and the brightness, the purity, the acidity, and the juiciness in this wine is going to be really, really gorgeous complement to all of these. So let's go ahead and get started with our first Petite cheese, shall we? Unless there are any other questions, we're good to move on. Okay. So I introduce you to Wabash Cannonball. Wabash Cannonball is a cheese that is made in southern Indiana, actually right across the river from Louisville, where I am from. And it has been made for many, many years. This is a producer called Capriole, and Capriole has been around for over 30 years. A woman named Judy Shad, who started this project, this hobby, originally with her husband and her 3 children, when they drove out into the countryside in Indiana and discovered this abandoned farm and just fell in love with it. It was a labor of love, needless to say. It was dilapidated and just falling apart. They fell in love with it and they wanted to buy it. And when they went to purchase the land, they realized that in fact, the farm had belonged to her husband's family back in the 1850s.
Oh, wow.
It had been their family farm. And he was like, saw the name on the title and the historical titles of the property. And it was just kind of blew their minds. And they thought, well, gee, now it's definitely meant to be. So they started with just a sort of a homespun hobby kind of thing where they wanted to have a couple little goats to make milk and cheese and whatnot for their own family. And then it grew to where Judy was making cheese just for kind of the surrounding area. But something to remember back in the 80s when she got started is this whole idea of like local products and local cheeses and farmers markets where you go and you know where your food comes from. This was like anathema back in the 80s, certainly in Southern Indiana. So there were no farmers markets per se where she would go to sell her wares. There was no local food movement that she could cater to. She really built up this entire business on her own and didn't have anyone to really teach her how to make goat's milk cheeses. She's very much self-taught. And then spent the rest of her career, or still spends much of her career, mentoring and coaching other cheesemakers on how to do the very thing that she does. So she's really an amazing, amazing woman. And makes some really beautiful cheese. So this again is Wabash Cannonball. It weighs about 2.5 ounces. It is a little tiny guy. It is pasteurized goat's milk, 100%. And it looks a little bit like a cannonball, I guess, but really more like a little crinkly brain. Now, the rind that is on this cheese is a very specific mold. All of these cheeses that we're having today are what we call soft ripened or mold ripened cheeses. They all have mold colonies, literally whole colonies of mold living on the outside of them. This one, number 2 and number 4 are all made of the same type of mold. It is called Geotrichum candidum. And it is...
Wow, you said that perfectly.
I did, and I still can't say the D word, diminutive, although I can now. Now it's just flowing off. Okay, so, and you can tell this type of mold by looking at the appearance of the rind. So you'll see how it's kind of got this wrinkliness to it. And you can even see this on the Wabash Cannonball. You can see the beautiful little crinkly, wrinkly texture. If you look at your bijou, you can see the crinkly, wrinkly rind there. And you can certainly see it in the Pico here. Although, I don't know if your Pico was like my Pico. I had to sort of like delicately maneuver my Pico off of the wax paper.
There was a little bit of a discussion about that earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Katie wanted to know how to do it.
I literally took my wax paper and I took a knife and I went, and I very gently like eased it off of the wax paper because the rind is just so delicate and it's so gooey, but it's so perfect and awesome right now. You're going to love it. But you can see the crinkly rind there, the Geotrichum rind, as opposed to cheese number 3. If you look at this one, you can see the difference in the rind on this cheese. This is a traditional sort of camembert style rind on this guy. So this is Penicillium candidum and Penicillium camemberti. So it's a different creature altogether. And you can tell just by looking at it, it's a much more kind of a velvety, smooth, a little bit more pillowy of a rind as opposed to the crinkly brain-like rind of the other 3. But again,
crinkly brain-like rind.
Yeah, cheese is so poetic, isn't it? So Wabash Cannonball, what makes it this beautiful gray color is the presence of vegetable ash. So have you put up the picture of the Wabash Cannonball yet? I put a picture in here specifically of the making of this cheese, because you can see that when it first starts out, it is just like a fresh chev, a fresh goat's milk cheese that you can see the cheesemaker is actually molding into a little tiny sphere. So you can see them all sitting there piled up on the table behind that cheesemaker. That is the beginning step of this. So they make the cheese, of course. They extract the curd from the whey. It is a very creamy, supple, velvety, fresh style chev at that point. They make it into a ball, and then they apply 2 things. The first is the layer of ash, which is ground up, burned vegetable ash. So it's flavorless. It's pretty much textureless. Well, once in a great while, you'll get a little nugget where you can get a little grit or something, which is very rare. It's a very fine powder. It really does 2 things. First of all, creates a really cool look. So it's just a neat looking cheese. And when we cut into this, you'll see what I'm talking about. But it also, the ash is a preservative because it manipulates the pH of the cheese. And it will really help cheeses like this, where you're trying to get this exterior rind to adhere and to grow and really stick on there and be a healthy, thriving rind. The ash applied to the outside of the cheese before the mold is applied really sets a beautiful, creates almost like a palette, a nice, beautiful surface for that mold to grow upon. So it's just a really neat process that also creates a beautiful looking cheese. So why don't we go ahead and cut into this?
It would seem like it would create some level of barrier, but I guess.
Well, it does. So
Certainly
also critters don't
barrier.
like ash. So historically, ash was used as a preservative, not only because it will alter the pH and make the cheese last longer, but also because critters don't like it. So bugs wouldn't want to get into your cheese if you had ash on the outside. So this was something that was used very much as a preservative and a pest deterrent back in the days before refrigeration. Obviously, we don't need that as much now, but it still creates a really beautiful look and allows for gorgeous rind development and adhesion. So what we can see here, can you see this, babe? If I hold this up.
Yeah.
So you're looking at the interior of the little Wabash cannonball here, and it's gorgeous and chalky and pasty. Oh my God, it feels like a dream. Chalky and pasty on the inside. It's just starting to develop its beautiful little cream line, which is the layer right on the inside of the rind. So the rind, as I mentioned earlier, is mold. It is a living thing, and it actually gobbles up the cheese from the outside in, which means it develops this beautiful thing called a cream line, which is where the mold is actually gobbling up the outside of that cheese and kind of breaking it down and turning it into a more gooey type of substance close to the rind. And then you get sort of the pastiness inside, and then you get the rind, of course. So you're really talking about a 3 texture experience here. And the longer this cheese ages, this one is still relatively young. The longer it ages, the more crinkly the rind will become as the rind gets more and more developed, and the more extreme the cream line will become as well. So we have a bunch of these Wabash cannonballs left over. I strongly recommend after the class tonight, pick yourself up a couple of these and keep one for like 1 more week and keep the other one for like 2 more weeks. And see how they differ. They age so quickly.
Well, that was a question I was going to ask. So it looks like all these are just young cheeses.
Very, very young.
This is a 10-day cheese. Okay. And so then how long will it last?
So Wabash Cannonball, Wabash Cannonball can last quite a while. In fact, Judy actually recommends when it gets very hard aged, you can actually grate it on top of foods. But for your typical eating of this, you're going to want to eat it within 3 to 4 weeks. So we got these like right away. So these are probably right at, I don't know, maybe 12, 15 days at this point. They're still pretty young. And then over the next week, again, the rind will become more crinkly, it will become more pronounced, more defined, and you'll get more of a cream line even growing on the inside of this cheese. So it's just, these are all young cheeses by necessity because they're so small. If you were to let this age for much longer, it would just deteriorate. So they go hand in hand. A super small cheese has to be aged a very short period of time. It's just how it is. So would you like to taste our Wabash Cannonball? The rind on these cheeses are all edible. Rinds are edible. So please do not cut them off or anything horrible like that. So cutting through this cheese feels like cutting through a really like a firm, like almost like an English pudding texture. So it's got definite softness, but it's got a firmness as well, which is really, really lovely. All of these cheeses will be absolutely wonderful with your honey. What I would ask, however, is give them a try first without anything, no cracker, no honey, nothing, to really appreciate the gorgeous, clean flavors of these cheeses. Oh, that texture is just divine.
Texture's great.
Velvety. Oh, so good. Tangy. I'm going to chew for a moment.
It's awesome. I have a question for you about Judy.
Sip your wine.
Okay. So they bought the farm in 1976 and she started making the cheese in 1988. Was this like a second career for them, or were they just sort of young and were like, let's go buy a farm?
Good. Do you try it with the wine? I'm sorry. So her husband was an attorney.
Okay.
So he would get up in the morning when he would milk all the goats. She would make the cheese during the day while he went to work at his law office.
Wow.
And then he would come home in the evening and do the evening milking.
Okay. It's
a lot. And they had 3 kids.
Yeah.
Little ones. It's pretty amazing.
Okay. Yeah. So she's she's not very old now.
I mean, no, not at all.
Got it.
So it's a pretty amazing.
Yes, Audrey says that's dedication. It is.
It's very much dedication. They did it together, the two of them, for 40 years.
Wow.
I mean, it's incredible. So again, Wabash Cannonball, 100% goat's milk. what you should be getting here, again, super velvety texture, just coats the palate. Please sip this with the wine. It's magical.
Meg, the lawyer, thinks it's funny that he was either milking goats or clients.
Oh, lawyer jokes. But it's made by an attorney, so I can laugh at that, right?
Yes, Meg the attorney.
Meg the attorney.
Made the
Love it. Thank you, Meg. All right. Questions about Wabash Cannonball?
We do not have any questions.
This is, again, Capriole is, I'm wiping this all over this towel. Sorry. Capriole is one of the true original American artisan cheesemakers, one of the cheesemakers that kind of started it all back in the 80s. And we're going to be tasting 2 cheeses from 2 other cheesemakers that are in that same.
It's funny because if I had to have guessed, I would have said the movement started in California or upstate New York or Wisconsin. It's surprising to me that
all of the above.
But also, this woman was in Indiana.
She was an outpost. She was like an anomaly. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, absolutely. And she very early on became friends with Hooper, Allison Hooper from Vermont Creamery. And they became friends.
Okay.
And so they kind of learned from one another. They were making cheeses around the same time. So yes, but she was like in the middle of nowhere and had no mentorship, no support locally at all.
Interesting.
So no, it was very much just her and her husband kind of figuring it out as they went along.
All right, Audrey has a question about
unwanted
mold. Do these? She's asking specifically about the Wabash, but do we need to worry about over time these cheeses developing unwanted mold?
So no, because you're not going to keep them that long. Okay, so these cheeses, you need to eat these within. I mean, these guys here within. Well, this guy like tonight, basically. This one you can get another week or 2 on. This one I would eat within the next week, and this one within the next 2 weeks. So you're not going to be keeping these long enough that there's going to be strange growths occurring, except on the Wabash Cannonball. So this has, in addition to the Geotrichum candidum mold, which is the wrinkly one, it also has a little bit of the Penicillium candidum rind, which is going to be more this white fluffy one. And so when we got we dust them off, we kind of like not prune them, but I don't know, we groom them a little bit before we put them into the cheese case. So these looked like little puff balls, some of them.
Oh, is that right?
So if your Wabash Cannonball starts to get like a very almost like cotton candy looking, a flossy white mold growing on it, please eat it. So good. And it is absolutely intentionally placed there. If you don't want to eat it, just gently wipe it off with a paper towel. And I hope you feel very bad for doing that. But,
so it sounds like Audrey had a little.
Oh, yeah, Audrey might have had a little puffball on there. So it's absolutely normal, especially on this guy when it's relatively young. And then the Geotrichum mold will kind of take over, and the other one will not be there anymore. So it's kind of neat though. So yeah, if yours had a little bit of like, look like a little snowman when you got it, just eat that. And if it grows again, eat it. I put a note on that inside your
that's funny.
Your instruction email, because I wanted people, if they got a little bit of the fluffiness on there, not to be like, oh my gosh, something's wrong with my cheese, because it's super, super awesome. But yeah, they were fantastic.
Good question, Audrey. All right.
All right. Are we ready for cheese number 2?
Let's do it.
Okay. So this would be considered one of the smallest cheeses in the world. This is a cheese called Bijou, and it is made in Vermont by Vermont Creamery. And Bijou weighs 2 ounces, sometimes just a little bit under. It's teeny, teeny, tiny, and it's about as small as a cheese will ever get. I have seen sort of like itty bitty, almost like little button things that are super, super tiny, but they're so young, I would almost consider those like a fresh cheese. They're really not a mature, like a mold ripened, matured cheese. So even though these cheeses are tiny and they're young, they're still aged cheeses. They've got complexity going on. They've got rinds growing on them. So these are actually developed cheeses. It's not like getting one of those little teeny tiny mozzarella balls, right, which are just shaped by hand and they're like little teeny pearls. Those are also tiny, but they are not self-encapsulated cheeses like these guys are with their beautiful little rinds. So Bijou at 2 ounces is just about as small of a proper cheese, so to speak, an aged cheese as you would ever come across. Is that not the most precious thing you have ever seen? Bijou means jewel in French. It's gorgeous, made by Vermont Creamery. Allison Hooper founded Vermont Creamery nearly 40 years ago, and was one of the most award-winningest American cheesemakers, and was so innovative. She was the first American producer to ever make cultured butter here in the United States. So that's like a mainstay over in France is cultured butter. It's super, super flavorful. It's actually made from bacteria cultured milk. Super, super delicious, European style, high fat, cultured, delicious. She was the first to do that here in the United States. She was the first producer to make mascarpone here in the United States. So obviously that's an Italian traditional cheese. And she was the first person to do it here. So she was always looking for kind of a way to bring a little bit of European tradition here to the United States. And Bijou is no exception. So Bijou is modeled after a tiny little French cheese that looks just like this called crottin, C-R-O-T-T-I-N. And crottin in French means little piece of goat poop. Because it looks like a little piece of goat poop, apparently.
All right.
Funny, huh? Okay, so we talked about rinds. This, again, you should recognize is our Geotrichum candidum molded rind. It's got that nice little crinkly surface. And I love to just pick this cheese up and do you want to touch it really quick?
It almost looks like you're the kids with Play-Doh.
I know, it's beautiful. Don't squeeze it too hard. Oh, it's very, very delicate.
It's not that delicate.
Did you just pop it?
Nah, just seeing what's going to happen.
Don't.
Hey.
All right, hands off.
All
right, so you can see how sort of delicate and tender and absolutely like a little work of art this cheese is. So we're going to go ahead and cut a cross section of this one as well, because I want you to see, oh my gosh, it's just so gorgeous. So I'm using my soft cheese knife here, and because it doesn't have as much surface area in the center of the blade, it works really well for cutting soft cheeses like this because they won't stick. Now, we talked a few moments ago about the cream line of a cheese. When you cut into this Bijou, that is the definition. Can you see this, Jeff? That is the definition of a cream line. So you have your rind here.
You know what? Actually, hold it up a little closer. You got to lean, wait for it to focus. There you go. Now you can really see it.
Okay. So that is the definition of a cream line. We have our rind here, obviously on the exterior. And then within the rind, in fact, when I squeeze this, it kind of goos out, right? So you can see this gorgeous cream layer between the rind and the chalkier interior of this cheese. That's the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen. It is absolutely perfect right now. And it's kind of hard to get absolutely perfect because, again, these cheeses are so small and they age so rapidly. You don't have a really big window of perfection. So, sorry, little Pico. And that's not going to work. I'll just put that down there. Okay. So we've got our Bijou. And again, this one is 100% pasteurized goat's milk as well. Really, really beautiful. May I give you a hunk of this? For those of you that have the wine at home, I'm going to show you how to get the most perfect combo of your wine and your cheese. We've done this before in class, so if you know the drill, please proceed. First thing we're going to do is take a sip of our wine. Taking the sip of the wine helps to cleanse the palate, helps to cleanse away the flavors and the components of the previous cheese. It helps to get all of that, those juices flowing, get you drooling and salivating and all that in preparation for the new cheese. Okay, so we've got a nice, clean, bright, fresh palate ready for the next bite. We're going to take a sip of this. We're then going to take the bite of our cheese and really chew it, get the texture, appreciate it. Once it's not going to like fall out of our faces, we are then going to take a second sip of the wine, which is going to help the flavors within this cheese just explode in a beautiful, beautiful highlighted way. Okay, I'm going to pour myself a little bit more of this.
How long do you let yourself drool?
Like after the sip and before the cheese?
First sip, then how many?
5 seconds.
5 seconds drool.
Okay, so here we go. Let it coat, swish it around a little. It's good. Okay, here we go. Pop that right in there. You ate yours already, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, the salt on that is so good.
I thought that was a reaction I had too. That there was a nice saltiness to it.
Texture, magnificence. I cannot even. Oh, okay. Now, take another sip of the wine. Told you.
Okay, so it's interesting.
So good.
So Thomas and Colleen say they love the cheese.
Good.
They love it with the honey. They do not like it with the wine. Tell us why, in more detail, Thomas.
I have to know.
Colleen.
I have to know more. Please elaborate on that. I feel like it brings out to me kind of the earthiness and the farminess of the cheese. It makes it taste a little bit more rustic. Oh, I just think it's absolutely delightful. Interesting. What did you think of it? Did you taste yours with the cheese, Jeff?
Okay, so yeah, I did, and I thought it was good. They just thought that with the Cannonball, the wine really made it like enhanced and brought it out, and in this case, it was okay. It just didn't do anything additive.
That's okay. Well, I look forward to hearing what you think of the next one for sure. So we talked a little bit about the small size of these cheeses and the fact that they are very, very young and relatively high in moisture.
Don't judge them, Jill.
Never.
No judging.
There's no judging. No judging at all. So we talked about, again, how they are relatively young, how they're high in moisture because they are relatively young. And they all are these surface ripened cheeses because you're not going to get a hard natural rind to develop on a cheese that is this small before it basically dies. Okay, so that's why they all have that in common. They're small, they're young, they're high moisture, and they all have these soft ripened rinds. You're not going to typically find a teeny tiny cheese with like a hard aged rind on it. One exception might be a French crottin, again, which they sometimes will age to the point where they're very hard, but it's just this rind that hardens. It's not like a formation of a natural, just a purely natural.
What about those like Pepperidge Farm cheddars that are those small little things that are just encased in wax? Is that not a real thing?
I don't know how to answer that question. I feel like, are you setting me up for failure with that one?
Not at all. I just feel like that's a cheese and it's...
Well, cheese is aged in wax, and cheeses can be small and aged in wax, but even those are going to be weeks or months old. Months old, probably.
I did say cheddar. I didn't say I liked it, but I did. I have identified.
Yeah, Jeff does not like cheddar, and it's.
Anyways.
Yeah, I think for Christmas I'm going to get you a big Pepperidge Farm cheese log, like the one with the nuts all on the outside. Yeah. All right. So.
Beef jerky from them, though. That'd be good.
So another thing that you might have noticed about these cheeses here is that, with the exception of one of them, which I kind of had to work for it, I'll be honest. Like, it's much easier to get all goat's milk cheeses in this profile, this size. We have our sheep's milk cheese here. This is a real find, a very, very small exception. So these cheeses are typically goat's milk cheeses, and that's not an accident. A lot of cheese making is very, very ancient, obviously. And so things that we take for granted now are actually based in necessity when cheese making was first being born. So there are vast differences between the properties of goat's milk and cow's milk. One of the biggest differences in that is the composition of the fat chains and the protein chains, and also the presence of milk protein called casein. So cow's milk has very long and complicated fat and protein chains, which makes it really, really wonderful for making gooey, stretchy cheeses and for aging cheeses for a really long time, because it takes a long time for those to break down and release all of their flavor components and all of that good stuff. But goat's milk, first of all, has very, very small fat chains and protein chains, which means not only do you get a beautiful sort of delicate, velvety, smooth texture, but the cheeses also age really, really quickly because of the much more simple composition of the milk. The lack of, not lack, but almost no casein is another reason that, and that's the milk protein that causes cheeses to take a longer time to break down, to go bad, so to speak. So if you had a vat of goat's milk and a vat of cow's milk on your counter, the goat's milk would sour much more quickly than the cow's milk. It just ages more quickly, and it's not any different when it's turned into cheese. This is why you can get really cool flavor development and complexity and character in these cheeses, even when they are literally 8 and 10 days old. So it's sort of amazing. You will almost never see cheeses this size that are made from cow's milk. Not never, but almost never, because of the unique properties of the goat's milk, which is really, really cool. What other questions do we have right now before we move on to our...
We got cords everywhere here, and I keep knocking them
I know.
into
Life is cords, honey. Life is cords. All right, so we're going to move on to our third cheese, which is from upstate New York. So this is from a cheesemaker called Old Chatham. And Old Chatham was founded in Old Chatham on the in the Hudson Valley of New York, and just a couple of years ago relocated to Groton, New York, right near Ithaca, in fact, where your parents lived for quite a while. So they relocated. It's about 3.5 hours west. They had grown to a point. They had herds of sheep that had a lot of them. And they found that the sheep did really, really well around the Finger Lakes area. The climate there worked really, really well for them. And so they decided to move so they were even closer to their flocks of sheep, which I think is super cute. But that's Groton, New York. So
so the cheese making facility was not where the animals
It was a few hours away. Correct.
Oh, interesting.
Correct. So originally it was. I mean, originally they had their own herd and they milked them. But as they grew, I mean, they're still a tiny producer, but they're relatively larger compared to what they were. And they had to have more herds spread all over the place.
And were they their herds or were they buying milk?
No, so they partner. Shepherds? In fact, Kinderhook, this particular cheese, the milk is collected from a cooperative of Amish farmers who keep the sheep and make the milk. And Old Chatham just makes the cheese.
Amish farmers in upstate New York there.
Apparently. Yep. So this again is Kinderhook Mini. They also do a larger version of Kinderhook, but why would you go larger when you can have this adorable little thing? This is 100% pasteurized sheep's milk. So it's kind of the standout here in that sense. So sheep's milk is similar to goat's milk in the sense that it has lower casein levels and the fat and protein chains are smaller. So it's easier to digest and can age pretty quickly. But something to keep in mind about sheep's milk cheeses is they're super, super high in fat. So sheep's milk has more nutrients, more vitamins, more minerals, all of the good stuff, but also has about twice as much fat as any other kind of milk. So when you make cheeses from sheep's milk, you're getting sort of an inherently rich, creamy, buttery kind of thing going on. So this is absolutely outstanding. This guy weighs about 3 ounces. So should we go ahead and cut into our little Kinderhook here? Dun, dun, dun. Oh, it's just so nice.
So the comments on this so far are that it's just very mild and even we've heard the word, or we haven't heard it, but I've seen it type bland. Gene and Bobby, they said that.
It smells very, very clean. Well, this is also, as this cheese continues to age, you're going to get more and more pronounced flavors from it as well. So this is another example of one that's relatively young. We had this one shipped to us directly from the farm. So it's relatively young. You can tell it's not supremely gooey yet. It's still got a little bit of its texture on the interior. This would be another one, y'all, to pick up now and keep in your fridge for like 2 more weeks and then give it a try. The flavor will become even more enhanced and the texture will become more gooey as well. Oh, I should give you a
All right, so folks are also saying it smells like dishwater.
Like bleach. Dishwater. Oh, the bleach. Okay, so the bleach that you're getting.
It does smell like bleach.
But like in a good way. It's not like in an ammoniated cheese way.
No, not at all.
It's the rind. So that's the difference between the 2 rinds. If you pick up this bijou and smell the outside of it, it smells very earthy and maybe like a little funky, a little goaty. And if you smell the outside of this, it has a very clean, fresh, almost bleachy smell. But that's just the nature of the mold that is growing there. That is not to be confused with a cheese that is past its prime that will taste like ammonia.
Not ammoniated at all. All right, while you're chewing that, I have to ask you though, given this, really nice. Why did you put these in the order you did? It seems like this should have come earlier, maybe first. Was there a method to your madness?
I wanted to break it up.
You just wanted to break it up because there were too many goats?
Yeah. I wanted to kind of have a sheep there in the middle, the contrast. Figured we'd forget about it.
The texture is pretty awesome.
Yeah, the texture is pretty incredible, actually. And I think if you were tasting this anywhere else other than next to these robust goat's milk cheeses,
what's going on.
You would be like, oh my God, that's dreamy.
Right.
It's so velvety. It's heavenly. Right.
And it
so
is
I think
tangier and a little different than like a Dauphinois or something like that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Do you want some more wine, honey?
Sure.
So this is the mildest for sure. And I debated like putting it in the beginning, but I don't know. I just felt like I didn't want to just do like sheep and then go. So I wanted to break it up a little.
It gave us something to talk about.
Right. As Bonnie Raitt would say.
Yeah, that's right. It was the Bonnie Raitt strategy of cheese boards.
It's good with the wine too.
Ordering.
All right. What questions do we have?
Gene and Bobby they feel a little bad now. It's like insulting the kids.
Well, you did do it twice. Were they the dishwater people or the bleach people?
I can't remember now.
Or were they the bland?
I think people? They just said bland. Who said dishwater?
You know, Gene and Bobby.
Are we making lists?
I sort of felt like we were like
these things down?
Simpatico, Gene and Bobby, and now I'm sort of like I'm not sure if you would talk about the cheese like that. She's quivering. She's weeping right now.
I missed this earlier and I'm scrolling back. Dave says,
Hi,
okay,
Dave.
People, you need to use better descriptive words or we're going to throw Jill into a heart attack.
Bland is no bueno. Okay, let's not say bland. Let's say mild. Delicate, perfectly fine. Delicate? Come on. All right. So Kinderhook really, but again, this would be a great example. I know you guys love to get the cheeses afterward. So this would be a great one for you to get now and hang on to it for 2 weeks. And you will see it'll be vastly different when you enjoy it in 2 weeks. I will tell you, honestly, the bijou is perfect right now. We don't have many of these left, frankly. So this would be one to get like now and eat now. Wabash Cannonball, I would get one now and keep it for another 2 weeks. And same with this one. This is an eat now.
Dave is trying to be a peacemaker here. He says, the more I eat the Kinderhook, the more I like it.
Dave, you're so wonderful. That's why I love you, Dave. And you always eat the rinds too. I never have to tell you, Dave, to eat the rinds. All right.
Teacher's pet.
He's the best. Love you, Dave. All right. Are we ready to move on to our final? Mine looks like a collapsing cupcake. It's like so beautiful. It's starting to actually crawl across my platter, I think. Are we ready for the last one? Or do we have any other questions?
Let's do it. That looks awesome. That really looks like a brain.
It does look like a brain. This is a cheese called Pico, and Pico is a pasteurized goat's milk cheese from the Périgord region of France. Périgord is, of course, famous for black truffles. So it is the home of black truffles in France. Really, really, really delicious stuff. They also are famous for their foie gras in that area and all sorts of beautiful, it's a big kind of orchard and tree fruit area. So they grow lots of beautiful tree fruits in Périgord.
Where is it?
As well. So Périgord is in Western France. It's just east of Bordeaux. So Bordeaux is in southwestern France.
Sure.
And Périgord is just about an hour east of Bordeaux.
Okay.
If that helps.
I can sort of picture that.
Okay. So southish and westish, but not super south. It's not like.
Not on the Mediterranean?
No. It's west also. So definitely not on the Mediterranean. Okay. So this is a cheese that's aged a mere week before it is released, but it has to come all the way to us from France. So by the time it gets here, it's probably been aged anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks. And has the beautiful geotrichum. I just love touching that. It's so cool feeling. This is a geotrichum rind on the outside, again, hence the wrinkly brain-like look. Again, pasteurized goat's milk. Super, super, supremely delicious. I'm going to move. I love this little box that it comes in. You all got these as well, but I just think it's so adorable. And it's got these little goat, like lovers. I picture them as being lovers. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe they're like brother and sister. I don't know. I guess they felt like boyfriend, girlfriend or something to me.
The goats?
Yeah. Don't they look like looking at each other lovingly, kind of? No?
Yeah, I think the one on the right's kind of making eyes.
They're both making eyes. They're like, I love you. No, I love you more. No, I love you more. That's what they're saying. Okay, let's try the cheese, shall we? So incredibly like succulent, goo-tastic texture going on here. Oh my gosh. So Jeff, I'm going to actually put this on a cracker for you because I'm transporting it across the table and I'm afraid it will land in my glass of water there if I try to just hand you the lump. So that texture makes me want to cry. I don't know what else to say. It is like so divinely gorgeous. It is actually like pudding, like the Jell-O kind of pudding. It's not like the firm British pudding. It's like the Jell-O pudding cup kind of pudding. Oh my God, look at that.
That is.
How good is that? Oh.
Wow. That's awesome.
It's like fruity. You get the fruitiness. This is one of the most perfect cheeses I've ever tasted.
It's spectacular. It's like in perfect condition too.
It has like a little bounciness on the interior.
Yeah.
Just a little tooth. It's got that silkiness.
Like buttercream icing texture-wise. Katie says. So Millie says Epois level deliciousness.
Epois.
Epois. I'm not French.
No, I know.
Yeah.
So I would.
Dave really likes it. How much of this do we have? He says.
We have a good amount of this. I will tell you because this is a super, super hard one to get. And I sense that people would really enjoy this one. Super hard to get, especially right now. My God, y'all. Getting stuff from Europe, I just can't. I can't. I'm at my wit's end. So when we get something like this and they're like, you can have this much of it, I'm like, bring it. Bring it. That's how good this cheese is. I mean, this is truly, and I'm not just saying this, it's one of the best cheeses I've ever eaten in my entire life. Ever. Agree. Like right now, like this one. I mean, I've had pico before. I've never had it be that good before. It's absolutely unbelievable.
Now, why do you say that? That is though?
Because I feel like the texture that it has achieved right now is like so spot on to where it's super ripe and gooey and succulent, and the texture is awesome. But
it's less about really this particular batch then, and more about where it is in its aging process. Where it
is in this age. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I would not say the nuances are so, oh my gosh, this batch is, it's more the age that has been achieved on this cheese. It's like otherworldly, and it's very hard to achieve this. You get cheeses like this and they're either like a little bit young and you got to kind of wait. You got to, oh, are they ready? Are they ready? Or you get them and they're so borderline that like another 4 days and they're going to be, So one of the best cheeses I've ever had. And it's great with the Chablis as well.
All right. I don't want you to skip over this. Oh, okay. I'm looking at the notes here.
Yes.
I don't think you already said it while I was distracted, but that's always a possibility. There's a note here about prehistoric caves. Oh,
in Perigord?
Yeah.
Yes. So Perigord is one of those regions as well where they have these beautiful prehistoric caves with the cave art on the inside. And there's actually apparently archaeological evidence there of human habitation for over 400,000 years. They call it man, that man has been there. I don't know what version of man they're referring to, but yeah, for 450,000 years. It's one of the most ancient habitations in all of the world, as in Perigord, France. Must be the truffles.
Yeah.
They're like, why leave? Why leave? If you live there, why leave?
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't.
Foie gras, truffles, and that pico.
And that cheese, please. And like a pear or two.
It's like breakfast.
Done. What other questions do we have, honey, about the beautiful, beautiful cheeses here?
Any questions, folks? Everybody's already talking polls.
Oh, yes. Pop up the poll because I'm so curious.
I think we know what the answer is.
So we've got the 4 cheeses here. We usually have 5, but we did 4 because you end up getting a lot of cheese. So you're going to pick your favorite. Is it the Wabash Cannonball from Indiana? Is it Bijou from Vermont? Is it Kinderhook Mini from upstate New York? Or is it Pico Affiné? Affiné meaning refined or transformed in French from Perigord in France.
Okay, Millie has a great question. So do you have a sense of, so this cheese is aged for 8 days, right? I'm sorry, this being the pico is aged for 8 days.
Originally, yes. This
one. So she's curious. You have a sense of like where it is now.
Yeah, this one's probably about 3 weeks. Yeah.
And that part of that is the trip from France to here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. And France, makes these small format cheeses, a number of them, especially in the goat family. They're very hard to transport because, again, it does take some time. to get them across the ocean. And so unless you're air shipping, which is done also, but there's a period of waiting with the FDA where it gets here and you're like, do I get to come in right away? Do I get to wait on the dock? What happens? So they sometimes will not risk shipping these very, very diminutive cheeses for that reason, because you're not quite sure an extra week could kill your cheese. So you don't find them very often here in the United States, unless they're made here in the United States.
All right. I misunderstood Millie's question. She meant like époisse is, did I say it right that time? Correctly? From the 17th century or something like that. When did this start to be made?
More recently than that. This is made by a company called Picardin de Périgord. I don't know. I'm not sure. It's not ancient. Like époisse has been made for hundreds of years. So no. What I will say is really cool about the Berthaud family that makes époisse now. It almost went extinct, and then Berthaud brought it back in the 50s. Actually, I think it was extinct, époisse. They also make a teeny tiny cheese. I was trying to get it, but I couldn't get it, called Trou de Cru, which is like époisse, but it's the size of bijou. I know. So it's a washed rind, super like stinky French cow's milk cheese, this big. And it's like, instead, it looks exactly like bijou, except it's got that orange, moist, washed rind on the outside. And it's called Trou de Cru. Can't get it. One day.
So, okay. So the poll ended and I published it, and Dave, his reaction was, wow, it's closer than I thought, that was my reaction too. Based on everybody screaming about the Pico, not screaming, but typing with all caps.
Oh, it deserved all caps.
Yeah.
Though. If you used all caps, good for you. Poor little Kinderhook.
Okay, so yes, Kinderhook received 0.
Come on.
0.
Not one of you.
0 for Kinderhook. The competition was so tough.
The competition was fierce for this one. I agree.
So Pico's the winner.
Mm-hmm.
You want to guess at what percentage of people picked Pico?
38%.
More, 49, 50%.
Okay,
half.
so 50% chose Pico.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I'm going to say Bijou.
Yeah. But
okay.
Not as far above Wabash as you would have thought.
Really? Like 25? 23?
So we're going to call it 50 Pico, 30 Bijou, 20 Wabash.
Okay. And 0 for poor little Kinderhook.
Zippy. Kinderhook, zippy.
Well, I love you, Kinderhook. I'm going to eat more Kinderhook after this.
Okay, now this is a really interesting comment. So Meg says this was her favorite cheese class so far.
You're an angel, Meg. Thank you.
And Liz too. And it's interesting because...
Thank you, Liz. I was sipping. Sorry. Thank you.
So some of the classes like, I forget, what was the one that we just did recently that was so popular?
The Goudas was super popular.
Yeah, I feel like one even before that was even more popular. No? Goudas?
Cheddars?
Yeah, I don't remember. But anyways, this one seemed like people were like, a little bit more. But so it's interesting that some folks really liked it.
Yeah, this class was not as popular as some of our more recent ones. And I was kind of surprised because I thought this is a cool chance to try some really unique style cheeses. But yeah, people were lukewarm on it. Yeah. Except for you, brave souls. I adore you. Thank you for being here. I mean, it was a decent turnout. It wasn't like some of the recent ones that we've had. So now that you've enjoyed all these, obviously go back, enjoy them with the honey, eat them with the crackers, do your thing. If you do have cheese left over, which it's very possible that you will, the best way to store these, listen up, is to get a Tupperware container, like a lidded plastic or glass container, and do not wrap them, do not do anything to them. Place them inside the Tupperware container and put the lid on them. That's it. And put it in your refrigerator. And then when you want to eat the rest of them, take the container out, take the lid off, and let them sit for about a half hour before you enjoy them. Do not wrap these guys in anything. And good luck even getting that one off your board. I had to move it before class started because it wasn't in a good position. And I had to use my spatula. I had to use my fish spatula, which if anyone knows what that is, it's the long, uber skinny one with like the perforations in it, because I could not move it. I was like, no. So good luck with that. But other than that.
So we're getting tons of great feedback, which you should go through after, about just the different kinds of classes people like. Mm-hmm. But Gene and Bobby, I don't know. You're on my list now, Gene and Bobby. This is funny because everybody's like, oh, I like the regional ones the best, and I like this.
Yeah.
And Gene and Bobby say seaweed is still my worst favorite class, or least favorite.
The seaweed?
Yes. But
Dave has this nostalgic connection with the seaweed cheese. He talks about it like
the
every
Irish class is coming back.
Yes, it is.
Without seaweed though, right?
No. Oh no, that will never cross my threshold again. Thank you very much. And if anyone does not know what I'm talking about, good, don't need it. All right, so in 3 weeks from tonight, not 2 weeks as usual, but 3 weeks from tonight happens to be March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. Please celebrate with me. We are going to be doing Irish Artisans class that night. So we have 5 amazing, I ordered them like weeks ago. I hope they make it. That's all I can say. You just never know. You never know in this time. But you know what? If they don't make it,
you'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. We always have great cheeses.
It'll cause me a great deal of stress, but you'll figure it out.
It will cause me a lot of stress, but we'll figure it out and it'll be amazing. So Irish Artisans, March 17th, 5 cheeses. We're doing a beautiful, authentic Irish red ale for that one. So for those of you that are like, oh, wine is great with cheese, but sometimes I want something different. Wait till you try this beer. It is unbelievable. So you get a beautiful 4-pack of the beer, you get the 5 cheeses. It's going to be outstanding and super, super fun. We're going to learn about the history of Irish cheeses, Irish cheese making, and the current kind of landscape there. So it's going to be really, really wonderful and fun. And for those of you that did the Irish class with us 2 years ago, I don't remember, a year, 2 years, whatever. I think maybe a year ago, totally different cheeses. So there will be no repeats. Do not worry that you're going to be eating the same cheese again. It's going to be all brand new stuff. So super, super excited for that one. So join us in 3 weeks. I will say the cheeses are limited. I think I mentioned this in our last class. So this would be one to sign up for earlier rather than later. Don't put it off to the last minute.
This is one of the ones that winds up being really, really popular.
Yes, it's one of the most popular classes we've ever done. And the cheeses were just like, there were only so many that we could get. And I'm just only going to cut them so small, y'all. I can't do it. So we have just a cap on how many we can do.
And we ship, and we're now going to deliver locally.
We do local delivery.
What day are we going to deliver on? Wednesday?
Wednesday. So we do local delivery. We do shipping wherever you may be, and obviously in-store pickup for those of you that are local.
So Dave said that he's already signed up, but he got Tuesday pickup.
Oh yeah, yeah. It just the website will assign you a pickup date. Just ignore that. You pick it in a little drop-down box. Okay. And you'll say, like, I want to pick it up on Wednesday or Thursday. Those are your 2 choices. And like the website might assign you a day. Please ignore that.
How local is the local delivery? It's Alexandria, Arlington, Falls Church.
Falls Church, Vienna, McLean. We're going pretty far.
Just not into the district yet.
We're not going into the district. And it's too much.
Not into Maryland?
And not into Maryland. Okay. Yeah, so Northern Virginia, but pretty far over into Northern Virginia. They're in a good region. So type in your zip code there. And honestly, email me if your zip code is not in there, and we'll see what we can do. Yeah. We're just starting it, so we're kind of trying to figure out where people want.
Maybe not Manassas, but
I'm not going to Manassas.
We'll ship to Manassas.
I'll ship you at Manassas. Yes. All right.
All right. That was awesome.
So everything is already online for y'all, so you can go there. But as always, I will send you an email tomorrow morning with the link to that page. But if you want to get in there quickly and order some of these guides, you can go ahead and do that tonight. Just go to our website and click on events, and then you'll see items from recent classes.
Talk about the wine dinner too. That's coming up.
Oh my gosh, y'all, we have a wine dinner on March 8th. Please, it is going to be so awesome. Ancient Peaks. We're going to be having 5 wines, 5 amazing custom-made courses that will pair with each of the wines. And we are going to be some of the first in the entire country to taste their brand new released, invented, created rosé from Ancient Peaks, which I'm super, super excited about. So this would be a wine dinner to come to. It's all on the website. So pop on there. I will see you in 3 weeks on March 17th for our Irish Artisans class. I am so eternally grateful to each and every one of you for being here tonight. We'll see you next time.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.